I boarded the wrong jet. And the man beside me wasn't just a stranger. He was the billionaire airline owner. One mistake changed everything. If you love luxury romance stories, don't just watch. Subscribe now and join our family. And tell me in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? I'd love to know. Carrie Ford adjusted the strap of her oversized canvas bag. The weight of her film equipment, a familiar ache on her shoulder as she navigated the bustling labyrinth of the private aviation terminal. Her mind was a whirlwind of camera angles, soundscapes, and the looming film festival deadline, blurring the edges of the unfamiliar luxury surrounding her. The air, usually thick with the scent of stale coffee and hurried footsteps in commercial terminals, here carried a subtle, expensive aroma of leather and distant, freshly brewed espresso, a stark contrast to her everyday reality. She'd been so focused on a last-minute edit of her submission, eyes glued to her laptop screen during the taxi ride, that the details of the flight change from her harried assistant had barely registered. Gate 7 private charter, just go, she'd scribbled on a napkin, and in her exhausted haze, the pristine, hushed lounge with its glowing marble floors seemed a logical, if slightly baffling, upgrade for her economy ticket. The attendant, with a smile that felt too practiced, had simply nodded her through after a cursory glance at her name. Stepping onto the jet, a hushed reverence fell over her, the plush carpet absorbing the sound of her worn sneakers. It was a space designed for hushed conversations and effortless comfort, a world apart from the sardine can flights she usually endured. The interior gleamed with polished wood and soft ambient lighting, hinting at a quiet opulence that felt almost intimidating. This was not a standard domestic flight. A nervous tremor tightened in her stomach. Her gaze swept across the impeccably appointed cabin, settling on the sole figure already seated, a silhouette against the vast oval window. He was undeniably striking, even from a distance, with a lean, powerful frame draped in a suit that looked as if it had been sculpted to his body. A ripple of something indefinable, a primal awareness passed through her, an odd sensation of trespassing on a space far too intimate for a stranger. He slowly lowered the tablet he was holding, his eyes, the color of storm-darkened skies, lifting to meet hers with an intensity that stole the air from her lungs. A flicker of surprise, then something more guarded crossed his features, a subtle shift that spoke of a man accustomed to absolute control. "Can I help you?" His voice was a low, resonant rumble, a sound that seemed to vibrate through the very structure of the aircraft and deep within her. Carrie felt a blush creep up her neck, a mortifying wave of heat. "Oh, I believe this is my flight," she stammered, fumbling for the crumpled napkin in her pocket. Then the boarding pass she hadn't properly examined. The gate number, the destination, everything was a blur. His gaze, however, remained steadily on her, dissecting her worn jeans, the paint stains on her sweatshirt, and the frantic energy thrumming beneath her skin, a stark juxtaposition to the immaculate stillness of his world. A wry, almost imperceptible curve touched the corner of his lips, a flicker of amusement in those formidable eyes. "I assure you this jet is exclusively mine, miss." He paused, an eyebrow raising in silent invitation. The full weight of her blunder crashed down upon her, a dizzying realization that she had not just boarded the wrong plane, but had inadvertently invaded the private sanctuary of a man who exuded raw, undeniable power. A true billionaire romance cliché brought awkwardly to life. She knew in that moment that walking away would be far harder than she anticipated. "Ford. Carrie Ford," she managed, her voice a little higher than she would have liked, the name feeling utterly insufficient against the imposing presence before her. Her cheeks burned, and she clutched her bag tighter, wishing the floor would simply swallow her whole. The scent of his expensive cologne, subtle yet distinct, now filled her senses, mingling with the jet's own polished newness, a heady combination that was both unsettling and strangely compelling. She felt an almost magnetic pull to the sharp lines of his jaw, the unwavering directness of his gaze. "Right," Noah murmured, a hint of something unreadable in his eyes as he finally moved, rising with an effortless grace that spoke of practiced power. He wasn't overtly hostile, yet his mere existence in this luxurious cage made her feel intensely aware of her own dishevelment, her practical jeans and worn sneakers screaming trespasser in this gilded realm. The subtle tension in the air was thick, a quiet hum that vibrated between them, a prelude to something she couldn't quite decipher. My assistant. There was a last-minute change. I was told gate 7. Carrie stumbled over her words, gesturing vaguely towards the terminal she'd just left. It was supposed to be a commercial flight to the film festival. My film is being screened. This is clearly not. That... She gestured around the sumptuous cabin, a laugh bubbling up, half hysterical, half embarrassed, at the sheer absurdity of the situation. The plush leather seats, the gleaming control panel, the sheer space. It was all too much. Noah walked past her, his movement deliberate, stopping at a small console near the cabin's entrance. His fingers, long and elegant, danced across a touchscreen, and a soft, melodic chime sounded. There seems to have been a mix-up, Miss Ford. Your flight was indeed at Gate 7, but that was for a commercial charter, not a private aircraft. A simple clerical error, perhaps, or a misunderstanding of the term charter. His voice was calm, almost detached, yet a subtle undercurrent of amusement lingered. He turned back to her, his posture relaxed, but his gaze still held that piercing intensity. Unfortunately, we're already cleared for takeoff, and with the incoming storm front, a return to the gate would be problematic. He glanced out the window, where the clear blue sky was subtly, almost imperceptibly beginning to haze with distant grey. The weight of his words settled heavy in the pit of her stomach, trapping her. This wasn't just an embarrassing mistake. It was becoming a forced proximity situation. Carrie's breath hitched. Problematic? What does that mean? I can't miss my screening. My whole career hinges on this festival. Panic began to prickle at her, cutting through the initial embarrassment. Her dreams, her hard work, all suddenly teetering on the edge because she'd boarded the wrong billionaire's jet. The irony was almost too bitter to swallow, yet his presence was a strange grounding anchor in the chaos. His lips twitched again, a ghost of a smile. It means, Miss Ford, that for the foreseeable future, you are my unexpected guest. And it also means, he added, his eyes narrowing slightly as he met her gaze, that the storm is not our only concern. Carrie felt a shiver trace down her spine, a blend of alarm and a curious spark that had nothing to do with the unexpected journey. Not our only concern, she echoed, her voice barely a whisper, her eyes involuntarily scanning the sleek modern cabin as if searching for an unseen threat. But his gaze wasn't on the mechanics of the plane. It was on her, a silent communication that tightened the knot in her stomach. The realization dawned that he wasn't talking about technical issues, but something far more personal, far more unsettlingly intimate, a burgeoning slow burn. A gentle hum vibrated through the floor beneath her feet, a subtle shift in the cabin's equilibrium, signaling the engines spooling to life. The sensation was profoundly different from the jarring rumble of a commercial liner. Here it was a smooth, almost imperceptible ascent, a whisper of power. She instinctively gripped the strap of her bag, her knuckles white, her gaze still locked with his. The world outside the window began to slide away, a patchwork of city lights shrinking into oblivion, carrying her further and further from her intended path. Noah gestured to a luxurious seat directly across from his, an unspoken command that was impossible to refuse. Please make yourself comfortable, Miss Ford. It appears you're in for an unscheduled detour. His tone was polite, yet held an edge of unyielding authority. A man used to having his directives followed without question. The air between them, already charged, seemed to thicken with the unspoken rules of this opulent cage, a testament to his world, where even mistakes unfolded with an air of sophisticated inevitability. Reluctantly, Carrie moved, her movements feeling clumsy and out of place in the pristine environment. She sank into the plush leather, the material surprisingly soft against her skin, enveloping her in a luxury she'd only ever glimpsed in magazines. The seatbelt clicked into place with a satisfying thud, a tiny sound swallowed by the vast quiet of the cabin. She tried to appear composed, but her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic rhythm against the smooth ascent. The scent of his cologne, rich and subtly masculine, now seemed to permeate the air, an invisible thread weaving itself into the tapestry of her confusion. Noah settled back into his own seat, his gaze still periodically drifting to her, a silent assessment that made her skin tingle. He opened his tablet again, but his attention seemed divided, a subtle tension in his jaw betraying his outward calm. She wondered what he was thinking, this billionaire airline owner, about the disheveled filmmaker who had accidentally parachuted into his private domain. Was she an annoyance? An amusing distraction? Or something else entirely? The contrast of their worlds was stark, a vivid tapestry of opposing desires. The jet leveled out and the seatbelt sign extinguished with another soft chime. The silence that followed was profound, broken only by the almost imperceptible hum of the engines. Carrie felt an intense awareness of his proximity, the warmth radiating from his body, the subtle shifting of fabric as he adjusted. The forced intimacy of the situation was beginning to settle in, a peculiar blend of discomfort and an unexpected, almost forbidden curiosity. She stole a glance at him, finding his eyes already on her, a faint, almost imperceptible smile playing on his lips. She knew with a sudden certainty that this journey was just beginning. Carrie quickly averted her gaze, her cheeks heating once more, irritated by the ease with which he seemed to read her. The silence stretched, becoming less an absence of sound and more a palpable presence, a thick velvet curtain drawn between them, yet impossibly thin. She could feel the subtle shift of air as he breathed, the faint rustle of his expensive suit fabric, every minute detail amplified in the confined space. This wasn't just forced proximity. It was an immersion into his world, a world she barely understood, but one that was now consuming her senses. She tried to focus on the view outside, the vast expanse of clouds unfurling beneath them like an endless ethereal ocean. The light was ethereal, a soft, diffused glow that painted the cabin in shades of silver and pearl. Yet even the breathtaking panorama couldn't fully distract her from the man across from her. There was an undeniable current between them, a silent electricity that made the fine hairs on her arms stand on end, a clear sign of the slow burn taking hold. "Are you truly a filmmaker, Miss Ford?" Noah's voice, deep and smooth, broke the spell of silence, pulling her attention back to him. There was a genuine note of curiosity in his tone, a departure from his earlier detached amusement. His eyes, now less guarded, seemed to invite a response, a glimpse into her own world. The intensity of his gaze was a challenge, an invitation she found herself surprisingly compelled to accept. Carrie hesitated, then found herself nodding, a small, involuntary smile touching her lips as she spoke about her passion. "Yes, independent. Mostly documentaries, character studies. This festival, it's a huge opportunity, a chance to show my work to a wider audience, hopefully get funding for my next project." Her voice, usually confident when discussing her art, felt oddly vulnerable in the hushed luxury of the jet, a stark contrast to the grand scale of his empire. He listened intently, a faint smile playing on his lips, an almost imperceptible nod acknowledging her words. There was no condescension in his gaze, only a genuine interest that surprised her. He seemed to genuinely absorb her passion, a rare quality she often missed in the superficial interactions of her busy life. It was a subtle shift, a softening of his formidable demeanor that made him less a billionaire airline owner and more just a man. "And what kind of stories do you tell, Carrie Ford?" He used her first name, the sound of it a soft caress sending a small jolt through her. It felt strangely intimate, an unexpected bridge built between them. His question wasn't perfunctory. It held a weight, a desire to understand the essence of her craft. The genuine engagement in his eyes was disarming, making her forget for a fleeting moment the circumstances that had brought them together. She met his gaze, a quiet challenge in her own. Stories of people, of resilience, of the unseen beauty in ordinary lives. I try to find the truth, the raw emotion that connects us all. A beat of silence stretched between them, filled with the hum of the jet and the nascent tension of their connection. His eyes held hers, a silent recognition passing between them, a hint of understanding that transcended their vastly different worlds. She felt a profound certainty that this encounter was far from accidental, and that her heart was beginning to agree. A warmth spread through Carrie's chest, a curious sensation given the sterile opulence of their surroundings. She found herself relaxing incrementally into the plush seat, the earlier panic about her festival screening momentarily eclipsed by the unexpected depth of their conversation. His gaze, once so formidable, now held a quality of quiet observation, as if he were trying to capture her essence, much like she aimed to capture the world through her lens. The hum of the jet seemed to fade into the background, replaced by the rising hum of an entirely different kind of energy between them, a delightful slow burn. "That's..." Compelling, Noah finally said, his voice a low murmur that seemed to resonate through the quiet cabin. He leaned back slightly, his long fingers drumming a soft rhythm on the armrest, a subtle gesture that betrayed a hint of contemplation beneath his composed exterior. To seek truth in the ordinary, most people strive for the extraordinary, for what is grand and aspirational. His words hung in the air, a subtle challenge, an invitation for her to elaborate, to draw him further into her unique perspective. Carrie smiled, a genuine, uninhibited smile that reached her eyes. But isn't there something extraordinary in every ordinary life, Noah Dixon? It's all about how you look at it. The quiet courage, the small victories, the everyday struggles that define us. She felt a strange freedom speaking to him, an openness she rarely afforded strangers, especially not billionaire airline owners. He listened, truly listened, with an intensity that made her feel seen, truly seen, for perhaps the first time in a long time. He held her gaze, a new glint in his storm-grey eyes, something akin to admiration. Perhaps you're right. Perhaps my world has simply shielded me from seeing it. There was a quiet honesty in his admission, a surprising vulnerability that chipped away at the formidable facade he presented. It was a crack in the armor of the protective hero she'd instinctively categorized him as, revealing a glimpse of the man beneath the polished exterior, making her wonder about his own untold stories. The jet, still slicing through the sky, suddenly encountered a patch of turbulence, not violent, but a definite jostle that sent a gentle tremor through the cabin. Carrie instinctively reached out, her hand brushing against his arm as she steadied herself. The contact was brief, fleeting, yet an electric current shot through her, a startling jolt that made her withdraw her hand as quickly as she had extended it. The warmth of his skin lingered on hers, a ghost of a touch that sent shivers down her arm. Noah's hand, however, lingered for a moment where hers had been, his thumb lightly stroking the fabric of his sleeve, a subtle gesture that did not go unnoticed by Carrie. His gaze met hers, a silent acknowledgement of the spark that had just passed between them. The turbulence subsided as quickly as it had begun, but the atmosphere in the cabin had irrevocably shifted, charged with a new unspoken awareness, an undeniable luxury romance blossoming in the most unexpected of places. A soft, almost imperceptible sigh escaped her lips, a silent admission that this journey, accidental as it was becoming far more than just a missed flight. The lingering warmth of his arm on her fingertips was a phantom sensation, yet it resonated deep within Carrie, stirring a flutter of nerves and a surprising wave of anticipation. She watched as Noah's hand finally dropped, his expression once again carefully neutral, but the micro-expression in his eyes, a fleeting spark she couldn't quite name, told a different story. The accidental touch, brief as it was, had irrevocably altered the delicate balance of their shared space, igniting a new flicker in their slow burn. He cleared his throat, a soft, almost imperceptible sound in the quiet cabin. "So the festival. What is the title of your film, Carrie Ford?" His voice was smooth, a practiced calm that seemed to smooth over the ripples of their earlier contact, yet his gaze remained steady, a silent promise that the moment wasn't entirely forgotten. He was attempting to regain the distance, she realized, but something had irrevocably shifted between them, making the professional facade feel suddenly thin. "It's called Echoes of the Unseen," she replied, her voice softer than she intended, still affected by the lingering current. "It's about the forgotten artisans in my hometown, their hands weaving stories into their craft, even as the world rushes past them." She found herself sharing more than she normally would with a stranger, drawn out by his quiet attention, the way his eyes seemed to absorb every nuance of her words, truly engaging with her story. A thoughtful hum rumbled in his chest, a sound that she felt almost as much as heard. "Echoes of the Unseen," he repeated, rolling the words on his tongue as if savoring their meaning. A fitting title, perhaps, for many things. His gaze drifted from her face to the vastness beyond the window, where the first faint hints of an orange sunset began to paint the distant horizon, casting a warm glow into the cabin. The rich mahogany interior now seemed to glow with a soft, inviting light. Carrie studied him, taking in the elegant lines of his profile, the subtle tension in his jaw. Despite the polished exterior, she sensed a deep current of loneliness, a quiet yearning beneath the veneer of the billionaire airline owner. His world, so opulent and seemingly perfect, struck her as intensely solitary, much like the artisans she filmed hidden behind their creations. It created a strange sense of empathy, a bridge between their contrasting lives. He turned back to her then, his eyes catching the golden light, making them seem to glow with an inner fire. "Tell me more about these stories, Carrie. What draws you to them?" His question was intimate, not about her career but about her soul, the core of her artistic drive. It was an invitation gently offered, to strip away the layers, to share the very essence of what made her her. The air between them thickened with unspoken invitations, a blossoming luxury romance. She felt a tremor of excitement, a profound awareness that she was standing on the precipice of something entirely new and deeply personal. Carrie took a deep breath. The subtle scent of Noah's cologne, now a comforting presence, almost blending with the crisp, recycled air of the jet. His question had pierced through her professional guard, striking at the very heart of her purpose. She found herself wanting to articulate the unarticulated, to share the deep, almost spiritual connection she felt to the act of storytelling. It was a rare invitation, and her artistic soul yearned to respond truthfully, despite the extraordinary circumstances of their forced proximity. "It's the unspoken narratives," she began, her voice gaining a quiet intensity. "The way a life seemingly mundane can hold universal truths. The lines etched around a potter's eyes, telling of decades spent coaxing beauty from clay. The hesitant smile of a weaver, proud of a pattern that might never be seen by thousands." She gestured lightly with her hands, her passion unfolding, oblivious for a moment to the vast chasm between their respective worlds. Noah watched her, a mesmerized quality in his gaze, his formidable composure softening around the edges. A genuine smile, one that reached his eyes and crinkled the corners, spread across his face, transforming his severe handsomeness into something effortlessly charming. It was a smile that promised warmth, a stark contrast to the guarded expression he usually wore, and it sent a surprising jolt through Carrie, deepening the slow burn between them. "So, you seek the soul of things, then?" he mused, his voice a low, thoughtful murmur that seemed to wrap around her words, giving them new weight. He leaned forward slightly, his posture mirroring her own, an unconscious intimacy that narrowed the space between them. The rich leather of his seat creaked softly under the shift, a small organic sound in the manufactured quiet. He seemed to absorb her every word, every nuance of her expression. The sunset outside intensified, painting the clouds in fiery hues of crimson and gold, mirroring the warmth blossoming within Carrie's chest. The cabin, now bathed in this opulent light, felt less like a cage and more like a cocoon, isolating them in a bubble of unexpected connection. She found herself studying his features, the subtle play of light and shadow on his sharp cheekbones, the sudden softness in his storm-gray eyes, feeling a profound sense of attraction. "I try," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper, her gaze caught by the depth of his. The conversation had drifted far from their initial awkward encounter, evolving into a connection she hadn't dared to imagine. This wasn't just about a missed flight anymore. It was about two vastly different people finding a surprising resonance, a shared understanding in the most improbable of settings, a true luxury romance taking flight. In the quiet hum of the jet, Carrie realized she wanted to know everything about the untold stories within him, the ones he kept hidden beneath his protective exterior. Carrie's observation of Noah, a man of immense power and evident solitude, sparked a profound desire within her to peel back the layers of his guarded existence. She imagined the stories his life might hold, the unseen struggles beneath the polished facade of the billionaire airline owner. The sunset glow intensified, bathing his face in a warm, inviting light, making him seem less unapproachable, less the titan of industry, and more a man caught in a moment of quiet reflection, a human canvas waiting for her discerning eye. "And what about you, Noah Dixon?" she dared to ask, her voice soft, almost hesitant but firm in its genuine curiosity. "What unseen echoes resonate in your world? Beyond the boardrooms and the jets, what truly drives you?" Her question hung in the air, a delicate challenge, a probe into the carefully constructed defenses she sensed he maintained around himself. The hum of the jet seemed to momentarily intensify, as if holding its breath for his answer. He paused, his gaze drifting from hers, momentarily lost in the fiery expanse outside the window. A sigh, almost imperceptible, escaped him, carrying with it a faint scent of expensive coffee, that seemed to cling to the luxurious fabrics of the cabin. Drive. That's an interesting word, Carrie. For many, it's about accumulation. For me, perhaps it's about creation. Building something tangible, something that moves. So that connects. His voice was thoughtful. A rare glimpse into a philosophical side she hadn't anticipated. His eyes returned to hers, now holding a deeper, more vulnerable light. But sometimes in the pursuit of building, one finds themselves adrift, disconnected from the very things they sought to create meaning with. The admission was quiet, almost a whisper, yet it resonated powerfully in the intimate space. It was a raw, unexpected honesty that stripped away his untouchable persona, revealing a flicker of loneliness that tugged at Carrie's heart, deepening the slow burn. A subtle shift in his posture, a slight lean forward, brought him marginally closer, closing the invisible distance between them. The scent of his cologne became more pronounced, a sophisticated blend that spoke of quiet confidence and refined taste. In that moment, the opulent cabin no longer felt like a symbol of his power, but a backdrop to a shared, unexpected vulnerability, a canvas for their blossoming luxury romance. Carrie felt a wave of empathy wash over her, a deep understanding of the burden of solitude, even amidst immense success. "It must be difficult," she murmured, her voice laced with genuine concern, "to build so much, yet feel so little connection to it all." She met his gaze, her eyes reflecting the warmth of the setting sun, offering a silent invitation for him to share more, to trust her with the depths of his unspoken world. His eyes held hers, a profound, almost aching gratitude in their depths. And Carrie knew with a certainty that thrilled her that he was about to reveal a secret only she would ever know. The air in the cabin crackled with a silent understanding, a fragile bridge built on shared vulnerability. Carrie felt her breath catch, anticipating Noah's words, her entire being focused on the man across from her, eager to receive the confidences she sensed he was on the verge of sharing. The golden light of the sunset softened the sharp angles of his face, making him appear less like the imposing billionaire airline owner and more like a man grappling with the quiet complexities of his own existence. A compelling figure for her artistic eye. "It is," Noah finally admitted, his voice a low, gravelly whisper, infused with a raw honesty that sent a shiver down Carrie's spine. "The higher you fly, the more isolated the air becomes. The views are spectacular, yes, but there's a certain chill when there's no one there to truly share them with." He extended a hand, his fingers tracing the outline of the oval window, as if mapping the vast, empty expanse that defined his usual reality. The gesture was unexpectedly poignant, a visual metaphor for his profound solitude. Carrie's heart ached with a sudden, fierce compassion. She understood in that moment the silent burden of immense success, the trade-off of connection for unparalleled achievement. It was a theme she explored often in her documentaries, the human cost of ambition. Here, in the luxurious confinement of his jet, she was not just an accidental passenger, but an unexpected confidant, a witness to a private moment of profound revelation, strengthening the burgeoning slow burn. He turned back to her, his gaze unwavering, intensely personal. "You carry forward with your unseen echoes. You see beyond the surface, don't you? You see the stories that wealth and power often obscure." It wasn't a question, but an observation, a recognition of her unique gift, and a silent plea for her to continue seeing him in that light. His words were a powerful affirmation of her craft, and an even more powerful acknowledgement of the connection forming between them. The cabin was now bathed in the deep, velvety indigo of twilight, the internal lights casting a warm, inviting glow that made the rich textures of the interior feel incredibly intimate. The gentle hum of the engines was a constant soothing lullaby, underscoring the profound quiet of their shared moment. The forced proximity no longer felt like a constraint, but a sacred space, an unexpected sanctuary where two souls could truly meet. A soft, almost imperceptible sigh escaped Carrie, a feeling of deep understanding settling over her. "Everyone has a story, Noah," she said, her voice barely a whisper, imbued with a quiet empathy. "And every story deserves to be heard." Her gaze held his, a silent promise that she would listen, truly listen, to whatever he chose to share, without judgment, without expectation, nurturing the delicate bloom of their luxury romance. In that intimate silence, Carrie knew with a certainty that thrilled her that he was about to entrust her with a part of himself he had never shown anyone before. Noah's storm-gray eyes, now softened by the twilight glow within the cabin, held hers with an intensity that made Carrie's pulse quicken. The air thrummed with unspoken words, a tangible weight of expectation that settled between them. She watched the subtle tightening of his jaw, the slight furrow in his brow, recognizing the silent battle he waged within himself. The inherent resistance of a man accustomed to impenetrable walls, now contemplating their dismantling. The quiet hum of the jet felt like a heartbeat, slow and steady, mirroring the burgeoning slow burn in her chest. He finally spoke, his voice lower than before, a deep resonance that vibrated through the quiet space. My parents, they built this empire from nothing, a single small charter plane, a vision. They believed in connection, in bringing people closer. He paused, a wistful quality entering his tone, his gaze drifting beyond the window, as if seeing ghosts of the past painted on the vast canvas of the night sky. But they were always working, always pushing. The business became everything. Carrie listened, her entire being attuned to his words, to the subtle nuances in his voice that spoke volumes beyond the spoken. She imagined a young Noah, growing up amidst the relentless ambition of his parents, perhaps feeling the pang of neglect even as he benefited from their burgeoning success. It was a familiar narrative she'd encountered in many lives, the complex tapestry of love, ambition, and the unintended distances created in their wake. This wasn't just a billionaire romance, it was a deep dive into human connection. I inherited the drive, Noah continued, his voice regaining a touch of its usual steel, though still laced with a fragile honesty. The desire to expand, to innovate, to create the most seamless, luxurious travel experience imaginable, to be a protective hero for the legacy they built. His hand absently clenched, a flicker of that underlying tension returning, hinting at the immense weight of responsibility he carried, a burden that few could ever truly comprehend. He turned back to Carrie, his eyes now holding a profound sadness, a vulnerability that was startling in its rawness. But I realized somewhere along the way that in my pursuit of perfection, in my effort to honor their dream, I lost sight of their initial vision. The human connection, the very essence of bringing people together. This vast, opulent world I've built, it's often an empty one. The admission was stark, a confession whispered in the intimate quiet of his private domain, a stark contrast to the expected glamour of a luxury romance. A wave of profound empathy washed over Carrie, her heart aching for the quiet loneliness evident in his confession. She reached out instinctively, her hand hovering for a moment, then gently covering his where it rested on the armrest. Her touch was light, comforting, a silent acknowledgement of his pain, a simple human gesture across a divide of immense wealth and personal solitude. The warmth of his skin against hers was immediate, grounding. Noah's eyes widened slightly at her touch, a flicker of surprise, then a slow, almost reverent softening. He didn't pull away. Instead, his fingers subtly shifted, gently closing around hers, intertwining their hands in a silent, powerful bond. In that moment, suspended high above the world, Carrie knew she had touched something profound within him. His gaze deepened, a silent question in its depths, and Carrie realized with a thrilling certainty that he was silently asking her to stay, to bridge the chasm he'd just revealed. The subtle intertwining of their fingers sent a jolt of warmth through Carrie, a silent affirmation of the profound connection blossoming between them. His hand, strong and calloused yet surprisingly gentle, enveloped hers, a tangible anchor in the luxurious unreality of their surroundings. The intimate gesture spoke volumes, a vulnerable plea and a quiet promise exchanged in the hushed cabin, deepening the exquisite slow burn that had ignited between them. "It doesn't have to be empty." "Noah," Carrie whispered, her voice barely audible above the gentle hum of the engines, filled with a conviction that came from her own deep belief in human resilience. Her thumb instinctively stroked the back of his hand, a small comforting motion. "Connection isn't something you build like an empire. It's something you cultivate, one story at a time, one person at a time." She met his gaze, offering not just solace but a quiet, unwavering challenge to his perception of his own world. He looked at their joined hands, a faint, almost bewildered expression on his face, as if he hadn't experienced such a simple, comforting touch in a very long time. His thumb began to move, a slow, sensual tracing along her knuckles sending shivers down her arm. The innocent gesture held a surprising weight of intimacy, a quiet awakening of desire in the opulent space of the private jet. This was quickly evolving beyond a simple billionaire romance. One story at a time, he repeated, his voice thoughtful, tinged with a nascent hope. He lifted his gaze back to hers, a new intensity in his eyes, one that spoke less of past regret and more of future possibility. Perhaps you could teach me how to find those stories again, Carrie Ford. The invitation was clear, an open door to a deeper level of engagement, a request not just for conversation, but for genuine guidance. The cabin was now fully immersed in the soft, internal glow, the distant stars twinkling like scattered diamonds against the inky blackness outside the window. The world below was an unseen entity, leaving them suspended in a bubble of luxury and escalating emotion. The forced proximity had stripped away their defenses, revealing vulnerabilities and desires that would have remained hidden in any other circumstance. Carrie felt a thrill shoot through her, a mixture of artistic excitement and a profound personal pull. "I'd like that, Noah," she said, her voice soft but firm, her fingers tightening around his, an unspoken agreement passing between them. The promise of sharing her world, her perspective with this complex, powerful man was intoxicating, a challenge she found herself eager to embrace. The protective hero in him seemed to soften under her gaze. As his thumb continued its gentle rhythmic dance on her skin, Carrie knew with absolute certainty that this unexpected detour was quickly becoming the most profound journey of her life. The weight of Noah's hand in hers, the gentle rhythm of his thumb against her skin, was a grounding force amidst the soaring luxury of the private jet. Carrie felt a delicious flutter in her stomach, a dizzying mix of apprehension and exhilaration. She had inadvertently stumbled into a world of immense opulence, only to find a surprising well of vulnerability and connection in its powerful owner. This was no longer just a forced proximity scenario. It was a deeply personal invitation into the life of a man who suddenly seemed to crave the very unseen echoes she sought to capture. "Tell me," Noah began, his voice a low, intimate murmur that seemed to fill the quiet of the cabin, "about the first story that truly captivated you, the one that made you realize you had to be a filmmaker, that you had to seek out these connections." His gaze was unwavering, his genuine interest a beacon that drew her in, making her feel completely seen and understood in a way few ever had. He wasn't just asking. He was genuinely eager to delve into her soul. Carrie smiled, a soft, reminiscent curve of her lips. "It was an old woman in my neighborhood, Mrs. Elena. She had a small garden, bursting with life even in the harshest winters. She'd talk to her plants, tell them stories, and they thrived." Carrie's voice softened, painting a vivid picture with her words, the images flickering in her mind like frames from a cherished film. The scent of damp earth and blooming jasmine, usually so distant, felt almost present in the opulent cabin. "I spent weeks filming her, just observing. Her hands gnarled with age, yet so gentle as she tended her roses. The quiet dignity in her solitude, her belief that everything, even a tiny seed, held a story waiting to unfold." Carrie leaned forward slightly, her passion illuminating her face, her eyes sparkling with the memory. She forgot for a moment that she was speaking to a billionaire airline owner, instead seeing him as a fellow human, hungry for authentic narrative. Noah listened intently, his expression thoughtful, a subtle softening around his eyes. He squeezed her hand gently, a silent acknowledgement of the beauty in her words, in her perception. "The dignity and solitude," he repeated, his voice barely a whisper, a flicker of something deeply personal passing through his storm-grey eyes. It was a profound resonance, a recognition of a shared understanding that transcended their vastly different backgrounds. Building their slow burn even stronger, the jet hummed on, carrying them through the velvet night, a silent witness to the deepening connection between them. The initial awkwardness had completely dissolved, replaced by a comfortable intimacy, a quiet understanding that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. Carrie felt an almost magnetic pull towards him, a desire to explore the intricacies of his world, just as he was eager to explore hers. A true luxury romance unfolding. She met his gaze, a silent question in her eyes. What stories, she wondered, lay hidden beneath the surface of his polished exterior, waiting for someone to finally see them? A comfortable silence settled between them, punctuated only by the distant hum of the jet engines and the soft exhalations of their shared breath. Noah's thumb continued its hypnotic dance on her hand, a subtle, persistent connection that grounded Carrie in the luxurious yet strangely intimate reality of their situation. She felt a profound sense of ease in his presence, a startling contrast to the initial apprehension that had gripped her when she'd first boarded his private jet. This wasn't just a powerful billionaire airline owner. He was becoming a confidant, a quiet partner in their unfolding slow burn. "Your turn," Carrie finally murmured, her voice soft, almost a caress, breaking the spell of the quiet. She squeezed his hand gently, a silent invitation for him to share a story of his own, to reciprocate the vulnerability she had just offered. Her gaze was warm and encouraging, a silent promise of understanding, urging him to delve into the depths of his own unseen echoes. She truly wanted to understand the man behind the empire. Noah hesitated, a fleeting shadow passing over his features. A brief return of the guarded man she'd first encountered. He took a slow, deep breath, the subtle scent of his expensive cologne momentarily intensifying in the cabin air. It was clear that opening up, especially about something deeply personal, was not a natural state for him. Yet her steady gaze, her unwavering presence, seemed to give him the courage to venture into uncharted emotional territory. "There was a boy," he began, his voice a low, rough rumble, tinged with a nostalgic melancholy, "always drawing, sketching aircraft. Not the finished planes, but the skeletal frames, the intricate mechanics beneath the polished skin." He paused, his gaze drifting towards the window, as if seeing those childhood drawings etched against the starry canvas of the night sky. He saw beauty in the engineering, the structure, the very act of making something capable of flight. Carrie listened intently, imagining a younger Noah, a boy fascinated not by the glamour of aviation, but by its raw fundamental core. It was a powerful image, a glimpse into the origins of his passion, the root of the empire he now commanded. This was the story of his ambition, not as a ruthless pursuit of wealth, but as an almost artistic fascination with creation, a compelling narrative for her luxury romance. He dreamed of building things that soared, that connected the world, Noah continued, his voice laced with a quiet longing. But somewhere along the way, the sheer scale of it, the responsibility, it eclipsed the initial wonder. The boy got lost in the boardroom, replaced by the man who only saw spreadsheets and profit margins. His grip on her hand tightened almost imperceptibly, a raw admission of loss, of a part of himself he felt he had abandoned. Her heart went out to him, understanding the quiet grief of losing one's purest passion to the demands of a complex world. She squeezed his hand back, a silent promise to help him find that boy again, to rekindle that spark. Carrie felt a profound empathy for the lost boy within Noah, a yearning to help him rediscover the innocent wonder that had once fueled his formidable ambition. The gentle pressure of his hand in hers, a silent confession of his vulnerability, solidified her resolve. This billionaire airline owner, whose world was defined by precision and control, was revealing a deeply personal ache, and she found herself utterly captivated, a burgeoning slow burn intensifying with every shared secret. "He's not lost forever." "Noah," Carrie whispered, her voice soft but firm, imbued with the quiet certainty of a storyteller who believes in redemption. "That boy, the one who saw beauty in the skeletal frames, he's still there, perhaps just buried under the weight of an empire." Her thumb gently caressed the back of his hand, a silent assurance that she saw him, truly saw both the powerful man and the sensitive boy within. Noah turned his head, his storm-gray eyes meeting hers, a flicker of raw emotion, a mixture of hope and skepticism, warring within their depths. "Do you truly believe that, Carrie Ford? That a person can reclaim what they've set aside for so long, what they've allowed to be overshadowed by necessity?" His question was poignant, laced with a vulnerability that tugged at her heart, painting him not as an untouchable titan, but a man seeking guidance, a protective hero perhaps, but one in need of his own protection. "I do," she affirmed, her gaze unwavering, radiating a quiet strength. "Because necessity often pushes us to forget, but passion waits. It never truly disappears. It just needs a little light, a gentle reminder of why it started." She smiled, a warm, encouraging curve of her lips that seemed to promise spring after a long winter. a quiet promise of healing and rediscovery in their luxury romance. The cabin remained in its intimate glow. The only movement, the imperceptible shift of the jet as it cleaved through the night sky. The profound quiet between them was no longer awkward, but filled with a rich tapestry of unspoken emotions, of budding affection and shared confidences. The forced proximity had become a crucible, forging an undeniable bond that neither of them could have ever anticipated. Noah's grip on her hand tightened almost imperceptibly, a silent acknowledgement of her words, a tacit acceptance of the hope she was offering. He studied her face, his gaze lingering on her eyes, then her lips, a silent question passing between them, a heightened awareness of their physical closeness that sent a thrill through Carrie. The air thickened with a new kind of tension, electric and undeniable. In the quiet of the night, Carrie felt a profound certainty that this journey, accidental as it was destined to lead them to a destination far beyond any airport. The air between them crackled, charged with an unspoken question, a silent invitation that hummed just beneath the surface of their conversation. Carrie's breath hitched in her throat as Noah's gaze deepened, his eyes dark as midnight, yet reflecting a newfound light, searching hers with an intensity that made her entire body tingle. The gentle pressure of his hand, now an intimate familiarity, seemed to pull her closer, blurring the lines between their distinct worlds in the exquisite luxury romance unfolding around them. "And you, Carrie," Noah finally murmured, his voice a low, husky whisper that seemed to caress her name. "What light do you need? What dreams are waiting for that gentle reminder?" His thumb, still rhythmically stroking her knuckles, felt like an anchor, yet his question was an invitation to float, to reveal the most vulnerable corners of her own artistic heart. He wasn't just observing. He was actively seeking to understand her in the same profound way she sought to understand him, making him a true protective hero. Carrie hesitated, a blush creeping up her neck as she considered his question. Her dreams, so often private, felt exposed and precious under his attentive gaze. "To tell stories that truly resonate," she finally confessed, her voice softer than before. "To move people, to make them feel something. And to find someone who sees the magic in those stories too. Someone who understands the passion that drives me, even when it seems impractical or impossible." Her gaze met his, a silent admission of a deeper longing that went beyond her professional aspirations. A slow, tender smile spread across Noah's lips, a captivating sight that melted some of the remaining ice around her heart. "Impractical and impossible often hold the most profound truths, Carrie," he said, his voice imbued with a newfound softness. He shifted slightly in his seat, turning his body more fully towards her, closing the subtle distance that had existed between them. The gesture felt significant, a deliberate act of drawing closer, deepening the forced proximity into an intimate embrace of their shared space. The rich textures of the private jet, the soft glow of the ambient lighting, the distant hum of the engines, all conspired to create a cocoon of intimacy, shielding them from the outside world. This was their own private universe, suspended between the clouds and the stars, a backdrop for a slow burn that felt utterly destined. Carrie felt an undeniable pull, a magnetic force drawing her into his orbit, a sensation both exhilarating and terrifying. His gaze dropped to her lips, lingering there for a beat, a silent question passing between them, a heightened awareness of the physical space that separated them. The air grew thick with unspoken desires, a tension that was almost unbearable in its sweetness. Her breath caught, her heart hammering a frantic rhythm against her ribs, echoing the insistent beat of their burgeoning connection. She knew with a certainty that electrified her what he was silently asking. Carrie's eyes flickered, a silent agreement passing between them, a profound realization that this journey was leading them directly towards each other. Whether they were ready or not, the unspoken question in Noah's gaze lingered, heavy and potent, a silent invitation that made Carrie's pulse thrum with a mixture of apprehension and an undeniable thrill. Her own eyes, wide and searching, met his, reflecting the deepening intimacy that had taken root in the luxurious confines of the private jet. The subtle scent of his cologne, rich and subtly masculine, now seemed to envelop her, an intoxicating fragrance that blurred the edges of reality. This forced proximity was quickly becoming a beautiful, Irresistible confinement. He slowly reached out, his hand moving with a deliberate grace, his fingers gently brushing a stray strand of hair from her cheek. The touch was feather-light, yet it sent a searing trail of warmth down her skin, making her shiver with a delicious anticipation. His touch was tender, a stark contrast to the immense power he exuded, revealing a deeper, more sensitive side of the billionaire airline owner she was rapidly falling for. "You are captivating, Carrie Ford," he murmured, his voice a low, husky whisper that seemed to vibrate through her very bones. His thumb, still on her cheek, gently stroked her skin, a soft, rhythmic motion that felt both comforting and intensely sensual. The words were a quiet confession, a revelation of his own captivated heart, and they sent a wave of heat washing over her, deepening the undeniable slow burn between them. Carrie's breath hitched, her eyes fluttering closed for a brief moment, savoring the exquisite sensation of his touch, the profound sincerity in his words. She leaned imperceptibly into his hand, a silent acknowledgement of her own burgeoning desire, her own growing fascination with this complex, guarded man. The luxurious cabin, once a symbol of his distant world, now felt like an extension of their shared intimacy, a private sanctuary for their blossoming luxury romance. When her eyes reopened, they met his, now even darker, filled with a raw intensity that mirrored her own longing. The unspoken desire between them was a tangible force, a powerful current pulling them closer, promising a connection that went far beyond mere conversation. The quiet hum of the jet, a constant backdrop to their emotional journey, seemed to fade into insignificance as their worlds narrowed to just the two of them. His gaze dropped to her lips again, a silent, almost agonizing question hanging in the air. The tension was exquisite, a delicate dance of anticipation and longing that made every nerve ending in her body hum. She found herself subconsciously moistening her lips, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs, urging him closer, wanting to bridge the small, aching distance that separated them. Carrie knew, with a certainty that electrified her to her core, that this was the moment everything would change. The air in the private jet was thick with a palpable tension, charged with the unspoken desires that shimmered between them. Noah's hand remained on Carrie's cheek, his thumb continuing its gentle, hypnotic caress, a soft, intimate connection that felt both tender and incredibly potent. Her eyes, wide and luminous in the soft cabin light, were locked with his, mirroring the profound longing that filled her own heart. This forced proximity had stripped away all pretenses, revealing a connection that felt destined, undeniable, a true luxury romance taking flight. He leaned in, slowly, deliberately, his gaze never leaving hers, a silent invitation that stole the air from her lungs. Carrie's heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic rhythm that echoed the escalating beat of anticipation within her. The subtle scent of his expensive cologne, now mingled with a hint of something deeper, more elemental, filled her senses, intoxicating her, pulling her further into his orbit. Every fiber of her being urged him closer, a silent plea for the moment to finally arrive. "Carrie," he whispered, his voice a low, husky rumble, barely audible, yet vibrating through her entire being. The sound of her name on his lips was a soft caress, a profound acknowledgement of their burgeoning intimacy. His eyes, dark pools of desire, dropped to her lips once more, a silent confirmation of his intent, a silent question that needed no verbal answer. The slow burn had reached its peak, a simmering intensity that threatened to consume them both. She didn't move, couldn't move, caught in the mesmerizing spell of his approach. Her breath hitched, her eyes fluttering closed once more as his face drew nearer. The warmth of his skin, the soft exhalation of his breath, a tantalizing promise. The world outside the opulent jet faded into a blur, leaving only the two of them, suspended in a bubble of escalating emotion, their destinies irrevocably intertwined. The soft brush of his lips against hers was like the first delicate touch of dawn, tentative yet filled with an overwhelming promise. It was a gentle exploration, a slow, sensual awakening that sent shivers of pure pleasure cascading through her. The kiss was soft, tender, a quiet question seeking a fervent answer, a confirmation of the profound connection that had blossomed between them in the most unexpected of circumstances. Carrie responded instantly, her lips parting slightly, her hand instinctively rising to cup his jaw, her fingers tangling in the soft hair at his nape. The kiss deepened, a gentle escalation of pressure, a quiet affirmation of mutual desire. His arms circled her waist, pulling her closer, eliminating the last vestiges of space between them, pressing her soft curves against his firm frame, a silent claim on her heart. In that exquisite moment, suspended between the clouds and the stars, Carrie knew with absolute certainty that she had found not just a story, but a destiny in the unexpected embrace of this protective hero. The kiss deepened, a tender exploration that bloomed into a fervent dance of desire, erasing the boundaries of the luxurious cabin and the world beyond. Noah's arms tightened around Carrie, pulling her flush against his solid frame, the warmth of his body a comforting, exhilarating anchor. Her fingers tangled in his soft hair, an unconscious urge to pull him closer, to lose herself entirely in the intoxicating sensation of his lips on hers. This was a profound, undeniable connection, far beyond any billionaire romance cliché, a true meeting of souls. His lips moved with a tender urgency, a silent language of longing and discovery. Carrie felt a dizzying rush of emotions, exhilaration, tenderness, and a profound sense of belonging she hadn't realized she'd been yearning for. The subtle scent of his expensive cologne now felt intrinsically linked to the intoxicating taste of his kiss, a sensory overload that enveloped her completely. Every nerve ending in her body hummed with a delicious awareness, a testament to the powerful slow burn that had finally erupted. Noah groaned softly, a low guttural sound that vibrated against her lips, sending shivers down her spine. His kiss grew more possessive, a silent claim that thrilled her to her core. He wasn't just kissing her. He was pouring years of unspoken yearning, of quiet solitude into this singular, breathtaking moment. The raw emotion in his embrace was staggering, revealing a depth of feeling she had only glimpsed beneath his formidable exterior, painting him as a truly protective hero. Carrie responded with equal fervor, her own desires ignited by the intensity of his. Her body molded against his, a natural fit, as if they were two pieces of a puzzle finally slotting into place. The plush leather seat of the private jet, the opulent surroundings faded into irrelevance. There was only Noah, his kiss, and the undeniable force of their burgeoning connection, a testament to the profound intimacy born from forced proximity. When he finally broke the kiss, it was with a soft sigh, his forehead resting against hers, their breaths mingling in the quiet space. His eyes, dark and heavy-lidded, opened slowly, meeting hers with an intensity that took her breath away all over again. A profound tenderness shone in their depths, a silent promise of everything that lay ahead. His thumb gently stroked her cheek, a continuation of the earlier caress, a comforting touch that lingered. "Carrie," he whispered again, her name a reverence on his lips. I never expected this." His voice was rough with emotion, raw with a vulnerability that touched her deeply. He wasn't just admitting surprise. He was acknowledging the profound impact she had already made on his carefully constructed world. A world where such raw, unbridled emotion was a rarity. In that lingering moment, intertwined within the silent hum of the jet, Carrie knew with absolute clarity that she had found her own extraordinary story. Not just to film, but to live. Noah's confession, whispered against her lips, resonated deep within Carrie, a profound echo of her own tumultuous emotions. His eyes, still holding hers with an unwavering intensity, shone with a mix of wonder and a hint of disbelief, as if he himself couldn't quite comprehend the seismic shift she had brought into his meticulously ordered existence. His hand, still cradling her cheek, felt like a promise, a soft assertion of the burgeoning luxury romance that had irrevocably altered their trajectories. "Neither did I." "Noah," Carrie admitted, her voice equally soft, laced with a breathless wonder that mirrored his own. She allowed her hand to drift from his nape, her fingers tracing the strong line of his jaw, feeling the subtle vibration of his breath against her skin. The sensation was electric, a constant reminder of the profound intimacy that had blossomed between them in the most improbable of settings. This was more than just a fleeting moment. It felt like an undeniable destiny, a vibrant, slow burn now fully alight. He leaned back slightly, just enough to look at her fully, his gaze sweeping over her face, taking in every detail with an almost reverent admiration. This isn't just a missed flight, is it?" His question was rhetorical, a quiet acknowledgement of the undeniable truth that hung in the air between them, heavy with potential and unspoken promises. The forced proximity that had brought them together now felt like a divine intervention, a perfectly orchestrated twist of fate. Carrie smiled, a soft, genuine curve of her lips that reached her eyes, now shining with a newfound joy. "No, Noah, it's everything." Her heart swelled with an overwhelming rush of affection, a deep sense of connection that transcended the initial awkwardness, the stark contrast of their worlds, and the sheer audacity of their accidental meeting. She saw not just the powerful billionaire airline owner, but the vulnerable, yearning man beneath, the protective hero whose heart she now held. The gentle hum of the jet continued its rhythmic journey, a steady heartbeat beneath their unfolding story. Outside, the velvet blackness of night was slowly giving way to the first faint hints of pre-dawn light, painting the horizon in soft, ethereal shades of lavender and rose. The cabin, once a symbol of his solitary dominion, now felt infused with a shared warmth, a beacon of their burgeoning intimacy. Every detail, from the plush fabrics to the subtle lighting, seemed to conspire to deepen their connection. Noah's hand tightened on her waist, pulling her closer again, his eyes radiating a profound sense of possessiveness, yet imbued with a tender respect that thrilled her. He lowered his head once more, his lips brushing against her temple, a soft, lingering kiss that spoke of quiet devotion. It was a moment suspended in time, filled with unspoken vows and the exhilarating promise of a future she hadn't dared to dream of before this unexpected encounter. In his embrace, Carrie knew with every fiber of her being that her world, once so focused on capturing stories, had just found its own most beautiful, most extraordinary narrative. The first delicate tendrils of dawn painted the sky outside the jet window, casting a pearlescent glow into the cabin, illuminating Noah's face with a new breathtaking softness. His eyes, still holding hers with an unwavering devotion, were no longer clouded by solitude, but sparkled with a profound happiness she knew she had helped ignite. His embrace was a tangible testament to their shared journey, a powerful echo of the accidental boarding that had irrevocably altered both their lives. The initial forced proximity had become an undeniable closeness, a bond forged in the most unexpected of heavens. "I boarded a private jet by mistake," Carrie murmured, the words a soft, almost ethereal whisper against the quiet hum of the engines. Her mind circling back to the chaotic beginning of this extraordinary detour, she looked up at him, a radiant smile gracing her lips, her heart overflowing with a gratitude she could barely contain. "And the passenger beside me was the billionaire airline owner I couldn't resist." The exact title, the very premise that had set this adventure in motion, now resonated with a deeply personal, breathtaking truth. Noah's lips curved into a tender, knowing smile, his thumb gently caressing her cheekbone. "And I found an unexpected guest who showed me that my world, for all its grand scale, was missing the very connections I thought I was building." His voice was low, rich with emotion, acknowledging the profound shift in his perspective. He wasn't just a protective hero for his legacy. He was a man rediscovering the soul of his ambition, guided by her authentic vision. The morning light streamed through the cabin, highlighting the rich textures of the leather, the polished wood, transforming the opulent space from a symbol of isolated power into a warm, inviting sanctuary. It was here, amidst the clouds, that their two vastly different worlds had collided, sparking a slow burn that had blossomed into an all-consuming fire. The contrast between her simple, grounded artistry and his sprawling, luxurious empire now felt less like a divide and more like a perfectly complementary balance. His eyes, dark and passionate, held hers, a silent question lingering in their depths, reflecting a future filled with shared stories, whispered confidences, and an intimacy that promised to deepen with every passing moment. He lowered his head, his lips brushing against hers, a soft, lingering promise that sealed their unspoken vows. The taste of his kiss was pure, intoxicating, a taste of destiny. "Carrie Ford," he breathed against her lips, his voice a profound declaration. "You didn't just board my jet by mistake. You landed in my heart, exactly where you were always meant to be." His arms tightened around her, pulling her into an embrace that felt like coming home, a safe harbor found amidst the whirlwind of their unexpected luxury romance. And now, as their unexpected journey truly begins. We have to ask, what does it mean to find your greatest love when you've flown so far off course? If this story touched you, don't leave without subscribing. Your support means everything. Hit the bell so you never miss the next luxury romance. And tell me in the comments, from which country are you watching tonight? I can't wait to know.